The ruins of what had once been the floating city of Ethros Prime stretched across the horizon like the remains of a shattered dream, its crystal spires now dark and lifeless where they jutted from crater-scarred ground. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Torres stood at the observation port of the Meridian, watching recovery teams move through the devastation with the methodical efficiency of people who'd seen too many worlds broken by war. Final casualty count is still coming in, reported Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's chief medical officer, but we're looking at less than 30% survival rate. The synthetic army was thorough. Marcus nodded grimly, his engineer's mind automatically cataloging the destruction patterns visible from orbit. Precision strikes designed to bring down a civilization that lived in the sky, targeting the anti-gravity generators that kept their cities aloft. Any word on survivors with specialized needs? That's actually why I wanted to speak with you. Dr. Chen activated her personal display, showing medical readouts that made Marcus frown. We've rescued 47 Velthrani, but 12 of them have wing damage that goes beyond our medical capabilities. Marcus studied the anatomical diagrams, noting the complex interplay of bone, membrane, and what appeared to be bioluminescent energy channels running through the wing structures. How severe? Complete loss of flight capability, according to their own medical experts. The Velthrani consider it. Dr. Chen searched for diplomatic phrasing. A fate worse than death. In their culture, losing the ability to fly is equivalent to losing their connection to their ancestors, their artistic expression, and their fundamental identity. What about reconstructive surgery? Prosthetics? Their healers insist it's impossible. The wing structure isn't just bone and membrane, it's integrated with energy pathways that channel gravitational fields. Damage to those pathways is considered irreversible. Marcus turned away from the viewport, his expression shifting into the focused intensity that his crew recognized as dangerous. Show me the worst case. Dr. Chen led him through the ship's corridors to the medical bay, where Velthrani refugees were receiving treatment for various injuries. The species was remarkably beautiful, tall, elegant beings with features that suggested both human familiarity and otherworldly grace. But it was their wings that truly set them apart, magnificent structures that resembled living stained glass, with membranes that shimmered through spectrums of color while energy patterns flowed along their surfaces like captured lightning. Or at least, that's what they should have looked like. The woman Dr. Chen led him to sat in a medical chair with her back to the room, her wings draped over the sides in a way that immediately revealed the extent of the damage. What should have been graceful curves of iridescent membrane were torn, shredded masses of tissue held together by emergency medical patches. The bone structure was visibly shattered in multiple places, and the energy channels that should have glowed with soft light were dark and lifeless. Princess Lyralii Starweaver, Dr. Chen said quietly, heir to the throne of winds and, according to our cultural briefings, one of the most accomplished flyers in Velthrani history. Marcus moved around to face her, noting the way she held herself with dignity despite obvious pain and despair. Her features were delicate but strong, marked by the pointed ears that distinguished her species and eyes that held depths of sadness that seemed to reflect the destruction of her entire world. Your Highness, Marcus said formally, offering the respectful nod that human diplomatic protocol suggested for Velthrani nobility. Lyralii looked up at him with eyes that held no hope, only resignation. You are the engineer Dr. Chen mentioned. The one who repairs impossible things. I fix what's broken, Marcus replied simply. Whether it's impossible depends on how you define the word. My people's healers have examined my wings. They say the damage is too extensive, the energy pathways too disrupted, the bone structure too shattered. Her voice carried the flat acceptance of someone who'd been given a terminal diagnosis. They say I will never fly again. Marcus moved closer, studying the wing damage with the clinical assessment he'd learned to apply to any broken system. May I examine the injury sites? Lyralii's expression showed surprise. You would want to. Even my own people find it disturbing to look upon. Your Highness, I've spent my career looking at systems that other people have written off as scrap metal. What I see isn't damage, I see a complex engineering problem that nobody's solved yet. With obvious reluctance, IHFYI extended her wings to their full span, revealing the true scope of the destruction. Marcus felt his breath catch, not from revulsion, but from recognition of the incredible sophistication of what he was seeing. Even damaged, the wing structure represented bioengineering that exceeded anything in human science. These energy channels, he said, pointing to the darkened pathways running through the wing membrane, they're not just decorative, are they? They're functional components of your flight system. They channel gravitational fields, allowing us to manipulate our relationship with planetary masses, IHFYI explained, her voice growing stronger as she discussed technical aspects rather than emotional implications. True flight, not simple gliding or mechanical propulsion. Marcus nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. And the bone structure provides both framework and resonance chambers for the energy manipulation? Yes. How did you? Because it's brilliant engineering, even if it's biological rather than mechanical. Marcus looked directly into her eyes. Your healers are working from the assumption that biological systems can't be rebuilt once they're damaged this severely. But I work from the assumption that any system can be repaired if you understand its principles well enough. IHFYI stared at him as if he'd spoken in an alien language. You think you could repair them? Restore flight? I think, Marcus said carefully, that I'd like to study the problem before I make any promises. But Princess, I've never met a broken system that couldn't be fixed with enough time, resources, and creative thinking. For the first time since he'd met her, something flickered in IHFYI's eyes that looked like hope. No one has ever said that to me before. Then maybe, Marcus replied, you've been talking to the wrong engineers. The engineering lab aboard the Meridian had been transformed into something resembling a cross between a medical facility and a xenobiology research center, with holographic displays showing three-dimensional models of Velthrani wing anatomy alongside complex mathematical equations describing gravitational field manipulation. The traditional approach focuses on biological healing, Marcus explained to the assembled team of specialists he'd requested for the project. But what we're dealing with here isn't just tissue damage. It's system failure at multiple integration points. Dr. Chen studied the anatomical projections with professional fascination. The energy pathways are more complex than our initial scans suggested. They're not just conducting bioelectrical impulses, they're actually channeling quantum field fluctuations. Which explains why conventional healing hasn't worked, added Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's quantum physics specialist. You can't repair quantum field generators with traditional medical techniques any more than you could perform surgery with a fusion torch. Marcus nodded, manipulating the holographic display to highlight specific areas of damage. So we approach this as an engineering problem rather than a medical one. The wings are sophisticated machinery that happens to be biological. We need to rebuild the system, not just heal the tissue. Princess IHFYI sat quietly in the corner of the lab, observing their discussions with an expression that mixed skepticism with desperate hope. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd submitted to countless scans, measurements, and theoretical discussions, but Marcus could see the strain of maintaining faith in a process that challenged everything her culture believed about wing damage. The bone structure is the biggest challenge, Marcus continued, highlighting fracture patterns that resembled shattered crystal. These aren't simple breaks. The synthetic weapons were designed specifically to disrupt the resonance chambers that focus gravitational fields. Could we use synthetic replacement materials? Dr. Chen suggested. Biocompatible composites that replicate the original functionality? Possible, but we'd need to understand exactly how the original bone structure interacted with the energy pathways. Marcus turned to IHFYI. Your Highness, I need to ask you some questions that might be personal. IHFYI straightened, her royal composure reasserting itself. What do you need to know? How did flight feel? Not the physical sensation, but the energetic connection. When you manipulated gravitational fields, were you conscious of the process, or was it instinctive? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Both, I suppose. The basic mechanics were instinctive, as natural as breathing. But advanced techniques required conscious control, deliberate manipulation of field harmonics. Like playing a musical instrument, Marcus observed. Basic notes come naturally, but complex compositions require training and intent. Yes, exactly like that. Lyraliai's voice grew stronger as she described abilities she'd lost. Each wing bone was like a different instrument, creating harmonic frequencies that combined into flight patterns. Master flyers could create field symphonies that allowed maneuvers impossible through simple mechanical flight. Lieutenant Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. Could you feel the quantum fields directly? Sense their fluctuations? We called it wind singing, the ability to perceive gravitational currents and energy flows around us. Master flyers could navigate by field sense alone, even in complete darkness. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. So restoration isn't just about rebuilding the physical structure, we need to recreate the sensory apparatus that allowed you to interface with quantum fields. Is that even possible? Dr. Chen asked. We're talking about engineering bioquantum interfaces from scratch. We're talking about reverse engineering the most sophisticated flying system I've ever encountered, Marcus corrected. And yes, I think it's possible, but it's going to require techniques that haven't been invented yet. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into the project with an intensity that worried his crew. He consulted with xenobiologists from across human space, analyzed quantum field manipulation theories, and developed surgical techniques that combined microsurgery with quantum engineering. You're pushing yourself too hard, Dr. Chen observed during one of their late-night planning sessions. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? When was the last time you tried to rebuild someone's soul? Marcus replied, not looking up from his calculations. Because that's what we're doing here. For the Velthrani, losing flight isn't just physical disability, it's spiritual death. And Princess Lyraliai specifically? This seems personal for you. Marcus paused in his work, considering the question. She's the most accomplished flyer in her species' history. If we can restore her wings, we prove the technique works. If we can't, you'll have given her hope and then taken it away again. I'll have tried to solve a problem that everyone else declared impossible. Marcus returned to his calculations. That's what engineers do, Sarah. We refuse to accept that anything is permanently broken. The breakthrough came during the 3rd month of research, when Lyraliai mentioned a detail about pre-flight meditation that made Marcus realize he'd been approaching the energy pathway restoration incorrectly. You said you could sense gravitational fields directly, he said, pulling up new holographic displays. But what if the wing channels don't just manipulate fields? What if they amplify existing sensory capabilities? I don't understand. What if Velthrani have latent quantum field sensitivity that the wings enhance and focus? That would explain why wing damage causes such profound psychological effects. You're not just losing flight, you're losing a sense that's fundamental to your species. Lyraliai stared at the theoretical models Marcus was projecting. You think the wings are more than flight organs? That they're sensory enhancement systems? I think they're both. And if I'm right, restoration isn't just about rebuilding what was damaged, it's about creating new pathways that can interface with abilities you still possess. For the first time since he'd met her, Lyraliai smiled. Commander Torres, if you can restore not just my flight but my wind sense, you will have accomplished something my people would consider miraculous. Your Highness, Marcus replied, already designing the surgical protocols they'd need. Miraculous is just another word for engineering that most people don't understand yet. The first attempt at wing restoration was scheduled for the following week, and Marcus found himself more nervous than he'd been since his first day in Starfleet. Not because he doubted his theories, but because he understood what failure would mean to someone who'd allowed herself to hope for the impossible. The surgical bay aboard the Meridian had been transformed into something that resembled a high-tech cathedral, with quantum field generators humming in harmonic frequencies while holographic displays showed real-time monitoring of bioelectrical activity that no human medical facility had ever been designed to track. Final systems check complete, Dr. Chen reported, her voice carrying the tension of someone about to attempt a procedure that existed at the very limits of known medical science. All quantum resonance chambers are calibrated, biocompatible materials are prepared, and emergency protocols are in place. Marcus stood over the surgical table where Princess Lyralii lay unconscious, her damaged wings spread to their full span under sterile fields that would maintain perfect environmental conditions throughout the procedure. The months of preparation had led to this moment. The first attempt to not just heal wing damage, but to rebuild the quantum biological interface that made Velthrani flight possible. Beginning with structural restoration, Marcus announced, activating the microsurgical systems that would work at the cellular level. Removing damaged bone fragments and preparing integration sites for synthetic replacement materials. The work was intricate beyond anything Marcus had previously attempted, requiring him to rebuild shattered bone structures while simultaneously laying the groundwork for energy pathways that operated on quantum principles he was still learning to understand. Each piece of synthetic bone had to be precisely calibrated to resonate at frequencies that would channel gravitational fields without interfering with the biological systems that surrounded it. Biocompatibility readings are excellent, Dr. Chen reported. Her immune system is accepting the synthetic materials without rejection responses. Good. Beginning energy pathway reconstruction. Marcus shifted to the most challenging aspect of the procedure, creating artificial channels that could conduct quantum field fluctuations through biological tissue. The technique required threading microscopic quantum resonators through membrane structures while maintaining the delicate energy balances that made flight possible. Hours passed as Marcus worked with surgical precision that pushed both his skills and the ship's medical technology to their absolute limits. The quantum field generators maintained constant background harmonics that helped stabilize the energy pathways as they were rebuilt, while holographic displays showed the gradual restoration of systems that had been dark since Lyralii's injury. Marcus, Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly, monitoring quantum field readings, "You're getting resonance activity in the restored sections. The synthetic pathways are actually conducting field fluctuations." Confirmed, Dr. Chen added, studying bioelectrical readings. "Neural activity in the flight control centers is showing patterns we haven't seen since the initial injury." Marcus allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism as he continued the delicate work. The theoretical models were proving accurate, but the true test would come when Lyralii regained consciousness and attempted to use her restored wings. Completing final integration protocols, Marcus announced, activating systems that would bond the synthetic components with biological tissue at the quantum level. "If this works the way we've calculated, the restored sections should be stronger than the original structures." The surgery took 14 hours, pushing everyone involved to the limits of their endurance. When Marcus finally stepped back from the table, Lyralii's wings showed no visible signs of their previous damage. The membranes glowed with soft bioluminescence, energy pathways pulsed with gentle light, and the bone structures resonated with harmonic frequencies that suggested perfect functionality. "Procedure complete," Marcus said, exhaustion evident in his voice. "Now we wait to see if theory translates to reality." Lyralii's recovery took 3 days, during which Marcus maintained constant vigil beside her bed, monitoring readings that showed her restored wings integrating with her nervous system in ways that exceeded his most optimistic projections. "Commander," she said when she finally regained consciousness, her voice weak but clear. "Did it work?" "The surgical reconstruction was successful," Marcus replied carefully. "But we won't know about functional restoration until you try to use them." Lyralii attempted to flex her wings, and Marcus felt his breath catch as the restored structures responded with fluid grace. Energy patterns flowed along the pathways he'd rebuilt, creating cascades of light that resembled aurora phenomena contained within living tissue. "I can feel them again," she whispered, wonder evident in her voice. "The energy flows, the field harmonics, it's like hearing music that's been silent for months." "Can you sense gravitational fields?" Marcus asked, watching readings that showed quantum activity beyond anything he'd hoped to achieve. Lyralii closed her eyes, extending her restored wings to their full span. "Yes. The ship's artificial gravity, the planet's gravitational well, Even the quantum fluctuations from the field generators you're using to monitor my recovery." Her eyes opened, filled with amazement. "Commander, what you've created isn't just restoration, it's enhancement. I can perceive field harmonics more clearly than I ever could before my injury." Dr. Chen studied the bioelectrical readings with professional fascination. The synthetic pathways are amplifying her natural quantum sensitivity. "Marcus, you didn't just repair her wings, you improved them." The first test flight was conducted in the ship's main cargo bay, with safety systems in place and the entire engineering team monitoring readings that would determine whether months of theoretical work had produced practical results. Beginning hover test, IHFYI announced, activating flight systems that Marcus had rebuilt from quantum theory and biological principles. Her wings caught gravitational fields like sails catching wind, lifting her effortlessly from the deck with grace that seemed to defy physics. "Field manipulation is perfect," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, tracking quantum fluctuations that showed sophisticated control over gravitational forces. "She's not just flying, she's dancing with the fundamental forces of the universe." Marcus watched IHFYI execute maneuvers that would have been impossible for purely mechanical flight systems, using her restored wind sense to navigate complex gravitational currents with artistry that transformed flight into performance art. "How does it feel?" he called up to her as she hovered near the cargo bay's ceiling. "Like coming home," IHFYI replied, her voice carrying joy that seemed to illuminate the entire space. "Like remembering who I was always meant to be." She descended gracefully to land beside Marcus, her wings folding with the natural elegance that marked accomplished Belthrani flyers. But instead of the formal gratitude he'd expected, she did something unprecedented. She reached out and took his hands in hers. "Commander Torres," she said quietly, her voice carrying emotions too complex for simple words, "you didn't just repair my wings. You made me whole again. You gave me back not just flight, but my connection to everything that makes life worth living." Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of what they'd accomplished together. This wasn't just successful engineering, it was restoration of identity, renewal of hope, proof that impossible was just another word for not yet solved. "Your Highness," he replied, "I think we made a good team." IHFYI's smile was radiant. "The best team. And Commander? I'm hoping this is just the beginning of what we can accomplish together." Looking at this remarkable woman whose wings now glowed with enhanced capabilities that exceeded her species' natural limits, Marcus realized that in solving her problem, he'd discovered something he hadn't known he was looking for, a partner whose impossible dreams matched his refusal to accept any limitation as permanent. 6 months after IHFYI's successful wing restoration, Marcus expected their partnership to evolve back toward normal professional boundaries. The princess had proven her wings were not just functional but enhanced, capable of maneuvers and sensitivity that exceeded her pre-injury abilities. Her people welcomed her back as a miracle of healing, and diplomatic protocols suggested she should return to her royal duties. Instead, IHFYI made a decision that shocked both their species. She formally requested assignment to the Meridian as a technical specialist, choosing to remain with the human engineer who had made her whole rather than resuming her position as heir to the throne of winds. "Your Highness," Captain Morrison said during the formal meeting to discuss her request, "I need to understand your motivations. You have responsibilities to your people, duties that come with your royal status. My cousin Therion has proven himself more than capable of assuming those responsibilities," IHFYI replied, her response clearly prepared for this objection. "And my people have learned something valuable from Commander Torres's techniques, that limitations we accepted as absolute are often simply problems waiting for creative solutions." Marcus sat quietly during the discussion, still processing the implications of IHFYI's choice. Over the months of her recovery, their working relationship had evolved into something approaching genuine friendship, but he hadn't expected her to restructure her entire life around remaining with his crew. "Princess," he said carefully, "you don't owe me anything. What I did was engineering, solving problems is what I do. You don't need to abandon your life to repay a debt that doesn't exist." IHFYI turned to face him directly, her amber eyes reflecting depths of conviction that Marcus was only beginning to understand. "Commander, You think this is about debt? About gratitude for medical treatment? Isn't it? No. Her voice carried absolute certainty. This is about recognition. About finding someone who shares my belief that impossible is just another word for not yet solved. About wanting to be part of a team that refuses to accept any limitation as permanent. Captain Morrison leaned forward with interest. Explain. For 300 years, my people have accepted certain truths as immutable, that severely damaged wings cannot be restored, that lost abilities cannot be recovered, that some problems have no solutions. Lyraliai's wings, now glowing with enhanced bioluminescence, spread slightly as she spoke. Commander Torres proved every one of those assumptions wrong. Not through luck or miracle, but through systematic analysis, creative thinking, and refusal to accept defeat. And you want to learn those techniques? I want to apply them. My people are not the only species that carries impossible injuries or limitations. Throughout the galaxy, there are beings who have been told that their damage is too severe, their problems too complex, their situations too hopeless. Lyraliai's voice grew stronger as she outlined her vision. What if that's not true? What if we could develop restoration techniques for other species, other types of damage, other impossible situations? Marcus felt something click into place as he understood what Lyraliai was proposing. You want to establish a specialized medical engineering program. Using the techniques we developed for your wings as a foundation for solving other impossible problems. Exactly. But I can't do it alone, and I can't do it by returning to royal duties that would limit my ability to travel, research, and work with patients who need impossible solutions. The conversation continued for another hour, but Marcus could see that Captain Morrison was already convinced. Lyraliai's proposal had merit beyond personal preference. Establishing the Meridian as a center for impossible medical engineering would enhance the ship's mission profile and provide valuable services throughout the sector. Approved, the captain said finally. Princess Lyraliai Starweaver is hereby assigned to the Meridian as Chief of Impossible Medical Engineering, reporting to Lieutenant Commander Torres. Thank you, sir, Lyraliai said formally, then turned to Marcus with a smile that transformed her entire expression. Ready to change some more lives, partner? Their first major case came 3 weeks later, when they received a distress call from a medical facility treating Kytherian refugees whose biomechanical integrations had been damaged by systematic torture. The traditional approach was palliative care, managing pain and symptoms while accepting that the integration damage was irreversible. Remind you of anything? Lyraliai asked as they studied the case files, her enhanced wings casting dancing patterns of light across their shared workspace. Several things, Marcus replied, already beginning preliminary analysis of Kytherian biomechanical systems. Question is whether we can adapt our techniques to completely different biological architecture. Only one way to find out. The Kytherian restoration project took 4 months and required developing entirely new surgical protocols, but when the first patient successfully reintegrated with their biomechanical partners, the celebration was visible throughout the medical facility. Impossible problem solved, Lyraliai observed, watching their patient demonstrate restored functionality that exceeded pre-injury baselines. Just the first of many, Marcus agreed, studying requests for assistance that had begun arriving from throughout the sector. Word is spreading about what we can accomplish. Over the following year, their reputation grew throughout human and alien medical communities. Beings who had been told their conditions were hopeless began seeking out the Meridian, hoping that the team who had restored Velthrani flight could solve their impossible problems too. We're going to need a bigger ship, Lyraliai observed during one particularly busy week that saw them treating everything from damaged Centaurian gravity organs to corrupted Andromedan neural crystals. We're going to need a whole medical complex, Marcus corrected, reviewing the backlog of cases that seemed to grow daily. That evening, as they worked late in their shared laboratory, Lyraliai asked a question that had been building between them for months. Marcus, do you ever regret it? Taking on my case, developing techniques that turned your life upside down, acquiring a partner who follows you across the galaxy. Marcus looked up from his calculations, studying this extraordinary woman whose presence had become as natural as gravity. Her wings, now more beautiful than they had been before her injury, caught the laboratory's lighting and transformed it into patterns that seemed to dance with their own inner music. "Lyralii," he said honestly, "you didn't just stay by my side, you made me better at everything I do. You taught me that engineering and healing aren't separate disciplines, that solving impossible problems is more rewarding when you have someone who shares your refusal to accept defeat. And you gave me a purpose beyond just fixing broken machines. Now we fix broken dreams, restore lost hopes, prove that impossible is just another engineering challenge waiting for the right approach." Lyralii moved closer, her wings folding around them both in a gesture that Marcus had learned represented profound affection in Velthrani culture. "So you don't mind having a princess who refuses to leave your side?" "I mind," Marcus said with a smile, "that it took me so long to realize you weren't following me around because you felt obligated. You stayed because we make each other better at what we do." "Exactly," Lyralii said, her wings shimmering with the gentle bioluminescence that Marcus had learned indicated contentment. "I don't follow you, Marcus. We fly together toward impossible problems that need solving." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Commander Torres, Princess Lyralii, were receiving a priority distress call from the Outer Rim territories. Multiple species reporting widespread injuries from an unknown weapon that specifically targets biological flight systems. Marcus and Lyralii exchanged glances, recognizing the implications immediately. Someone was using weapons designed to create the same type of damage that had once grounded her permanently. "Looks like our next impossible problem just found us," Marcus observed, already beginning to gather their specialized equipment. "Good thing we make such a good team," Lyralii replied, her wings spreading as she prepared for another mission where their combined skills would be needed to restore what others had declared irreparable. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of their new medical facility, a specialized station dedicated to impossible restoration cases, watching Lyralii work with a group of young Velthrani whose wings had been damaged in a recent conflict. Her patience was infinite, her technique flawless, and her ability to inspire hope in the hopeless had become legendary throughout the sector. "She's remarkable," Dr. Chen observed, joining Marcus at the observation window. "I've never seen anyone combine engineering precision with such profound empathy." "She always was," Marcus replied, watching Lyralii demonstrate wing exercises to patients who had been told they would never fly again. "I just gave her back the tools to express it." "And she gave you?" Marcus considered the question, thinking about how his life had changed since that first day when he'd looked at Lyralii's damaged wings and seen an engineering challenge instead of irreparable loss. "She gave me a partner who proves every day that the best solutions come from refusing to work alone," he said finally. "Someone who taught me that healing and creating are different expressions of the same impulse." On the training floor below, Lyralii looked up and caught his eye through the observation window. Her smile was radiant, her wings caught the station's lighting and transformed it into patterns that seemed to celebrate their shared purpose. She had chosen to stay not from debt or gratitude, but from recognition. Two people who had found in each other the missing pieces that made their individual talents into something greater than either could achieve alone. "Ready for the next impossible case?" her gesture seemed to ask. Marcus nodded, already anticipating whatever challenge would next test their ability to restore what others declared beyond repair. Together, they had learned that impossible was just another word for not yet solved, and they had a galaxy full of broken dreams waiting to be made whole again. In the end, the most powerful force in the universe wasn't gravity or quantum fields or the energy that flowed through restored wings, it was the recognition between two people that they were stronger together than apart, and that some partnerships were worth crossing the galaxy to maintain.